Hello and welcome to the Story Shed. Hope that you're all well and taking good care. As ever, I have a story for you today from the book My World of Fairy Tales. And this one again is a classic tale. So hopefully sit back, relax and enjoy the story of the Little Mermaid. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful little mermaid. Her father was the Sea King, and she lived with him and her 5 sisters in a wonderful palace in the deepest part of the ocean. The Sea King's daughters were all very pretty, but the prettiest of all was the youngest, the Little Mermaid, whose skin was as fresh as rose petals and whose eyes were as blue as cornflowers. The Little Mermaid was quieter than her sisters. Her playthings were the fishes with gold and silver scales that swam all day in and out of the castle. She did not enjoy visiting the shipwrecks as her sisters did, and she was sad whenever a poor broken ship sank to the bottom of the sea. Whenever this happened, she hid in the beautiful gardens that surrounded her father's castle. Here, among the red and dark blue flowers and the golden fruits, she dreamt of the moment she was longing for, the moment when she would be 15 years old. The reason that she longed for that time when she would be 15 was that every sea maiden was allowed to swim wherever she pleased. If she wanted to, she could rise to the surface of the sea and sit on the rocks or swim close to the shore where the earth people lived. Once, the Little Mermaid had found a boy statue with a gentle, handsome face that had come from a shipwreck. She had carefully carried the boy statue back with her to her own special part of the garden, and it had become her dearest possession. It was because of the statue that she longed so much to see the earth people for herself. At last, the day came when the Sea King's youngest daughter was 15 years old. Her wise old grandmother had told her much about the earth people, and now she would be able to see them for herself. You will find them strange, her grandmother told her as they sat together on her birthday. Our bodies end in graceful fishtails. They walk on 2 supports that are called legs. Then we can never be truly like them, asked the mermaid. No, said the grandmother. We cannot shed tears like the earth people, and we do not look forward to another life above the heavens as they do. When we die, we become foam on the waves of the sea. But we live much longer than they do, for 300 years, and we have much to make us happy. I long to know the earth people, murmured the mermaid, but her grandmother pretended not to hear. You are the loveliest of the Sea King's daughters, the wise old mermaid went on, and you have the most beautiful singing voice of all the sea maidens. You should be very happy. Then her grandmother placed a garland of white flowers that were really priceless pearls on the princess's golden hair, and on her long, glistening tail she fastened 8 large oysters. They hurt, protested the mermaid. That does not matter, said her grandmother sternly. The oysters are a sign of your rank. Those you meet on your travels will know that you are a daughter of the king when they see the oysters. When she was quite ready, the princess said goodbye to her family and her friends and rose like a water bubble up through the blue sea. As she lifted her head above the waves, She could see the bright stars and the pale crimson of the sky. But more beautiful than the stars and the sky was the great ship with 3 masts that rocked gently at anchor nearby. The little mermaid had never before seen such a ship, nor the sailors who sailed her. There was music coming from the ship, and as the night grew darker, hundreds of lanterns were lit, and men and women, beautifully and richly dressed, crowded the deck. Presently, the mermaid saw a young man appear, laughing merrily and holding a glass in his hand. Oh, how handsome he was, and how he reminded her of the boy statue she kept in the garden at home. After a while, the little mermaid realized that the young man was a prince, and that today was his birthday. Greatly daring, the little mermaid swam closer to the big ship, her long tail gleaming silver in the light from its lanterns. But almost at once she dived beneath the waves as a shower of golden rockets shot up into the sky, and the sea was suddenly aglow with 1,000 flashing stars. When the party was over and the ship was quiet and dark, the mermaid knew that it was time for her to return to her father's palace. But she couldn't bear to leave the ship, so she swam round and round, delaying her moment of departure. Presently, she saw dark storm clouds gather in the sky. The wind, too, began to rise, and the waves suddenly were like swirling black mountains. Sailors rushed on deck, hurriedly pulling down the great sails and setting for a course that carried her over the waves. But alas, at the height of the terrible storm, the mainmasts broke and the proud ship rolled over on its side. The little mermaid swam anxiously among the wooden beams and the casks that floated on the angry waves. No earthman could live in such a raging sea. If she did not find the prince, she knew he would drown, and she could not, must not, allow this to happen. The princess heard the despairing cries of the sailors, but she thought only of the prince, and when at last she found him, he was already half drowned. Holding his head above the water, she swam with him towards the shore, and then, with all her strength, pulled him onto the smooth, golden sands. For a time, the little mermaid cradled the young earthman in her arms, completely happy as she looked down at him. Then she slipped away back into the sea to wait and watch. As the dawn appeared, she saw the prince stir, and soon some pretty young girls came down to the beach. At the sight of the prince, one ran back to the town for help, and presently the prince was lifted onto a litter and carried away. Sadly, the mermaid dived quickly under the water and returned to her father's castle. Almost at once, she went to her own special garden to be near the boy statue that reminded her so much of the handsome prince. As the days passed, the little mermaid grew more and more thoughtful and quiet. She rarely smiled, and she refused altogether to join in her sister's merry antics and games. "Tell us your secret," her older sister begged her one day. "Perhaps we can help you." "You cannot help me," the little mermaid said. "I've fallen in love with an earthman, a tall, handsome prince." "But we know where the prince lives," cried the eldest sister. "We've often seen him in his sailing boat. Come, we'll take you to his palace." Then the sisters linked arms and rose up together through the sparkling sea. "There!" cried the eldest as they lifted their heads above the waves. "There is his palace. It comes almost down to the water's edge. We dare not swim too close, but the prince often comes and stands on the marble steps that lead into the water. For the first time for many days, The little mermaid smiled happily. Now I can come here whenever I wish, she said. I am content, for I know that one day I shall see him again. Every morning after that, the little mermaid rose up through the blue waters, hoping to catch sight of the prince. She swam closer to the land than any of her sisters would have dared, and she came to know the fishermen and the times when the young prince sailed his boat. How long do the earth people live? The little mermaid asked her grandmother one day as she combed out her golden hair. Not very long, said her grandmother, but they do not die as we do. Why do you ask me about such matters? I do not want to become foam on the waves, said the princess sadly. I want to be like the earth people. Her grandmother had no patience with such talk. You're a sea maiden, she told the princess sharply. You have a fish tail, and you cannot expect to be accepted by the earth people. They will never take you in. No earthman could ever love you because of your fish tail. He would think it ugly. That night, the little mermaid sang more sweetly than ever for her father and her sisters. At the end of her song, she slipped quietly away, and her mind was made up. She knew what she must do. She must visit the terrible sea witch, whose powers were known and feared throughout the sea kingdom. No flowers grew where the sea witch lived. There was nothing but deep, dark whirlpools, and the way was covered with black, slimy mud. The sea witch's house stood among tall, twisting reeds that looked like fat, yellow snakes. All around it was dangerous, marshy swamps, where once the poisonous creatures of the sea lived. So gloomy and terrifying was this place that the mermaid needed all her courage to swim towards the house. She found the sea witch sitting on a bench that was made out of the white bones of shipwrecked earthmen. Snakes crawled all over her arms, and her lap was holding her favourite pet, a fat, ugly toad. I know what you want, said the sea witch, as soon as the princess swam up to her. You want to get rid of your fish tail and to have two supports so that the young earth prince can fall in love with you. Yes, yes, whispered the little mermaid. That is what I want. Will you help me? I will help you, said the sea witch, if you're willing to pay my price. I will pay it, said the princess. Then I will prepare a magic potion which you must drink when you are on land, said the sea witch. Your tail will shrivel up and disappear, and in its place you will have two legs, but there will be much pain. Are you willing to suffer? Yes, whispered the mermaid. Whenever you walk, it will be as if a sharp sword had pierced your feet, went on the witch. But none will guess this, for you will walk and dance with such grace that the eyes of the earth people will be dazzled by your beautiful movements. I am ready to endure the pain, said the mermaid. What price must I pay for the gift of two legs? You must give me your voice, said the witch. It is the most beautiful voice in the sea kingdom, and I want it. The princess grew deathly pale. But if I have no voice, how can I tell the prince of my love for him? She asked quaveringly. Your eyes will tell him, said the sea witch. There will be no need for words. He will look into your eyes and see your love for him mirrored there. It is a high price, said the princess at last, but I am willing to pay it. So be it, said the witch. But remember this, if you do not win the prince's love and he marries someone else, your heart will break and you will, after all, become foam on the waves. You can never return to your father's castle. I understand, murmured the little mermaid. I understand. The witch brought out her black pot and began to make the potion that would change the mermaid into an earth girl. Many strange and horrible creatures she threw into the bubbling pot, and the little mermaid covered her eyes so she could not see the boiling mixture that steamed and hissed as the witch stirred and stirred. At last, when the potion was ready, the witch dipped a small bottle into the pot and filled it with the liquid. There, said the witch, take this bottle. Do not drink its contents until you are on land. The mermaid took the bottle, but she could not thank the witch, for already her voice had gone. She was dumb. Holding the bottle carefully, the little mermaid swam straight away to the prince's palace and dragged herself up onto the first step of the marble stairway, where she'd often seen the prince. Then she drank the witch's potion, draining the bottle to the very last drop. It was just as the witch had said it would be. She felt terrible stabs of fearful pain as her fishtail began to shrivel up. So great was the agony that the little mermaid could not bear it. She fainted. It was bright morning when she opened her eyes and saw the prince himself standing over her. The prince helped her up, and the little mermaid, looking down, now saw that she had slim and white and very dainty little feet and legs. The prince was very taken with the little mermaid. He called her his little orphan from the sea, thinking that she survived some shipwreck. When he found she could not speak, he petted her and made even more fuss of her, dressing her in pretty silk dresses and giving her golden slippers to wear on her tiny feet. Soon the little mermaid was everyone's favourite at court. When she danced, her movements were so graceful that they held the prince spellbound. Never have I seen such perfect dancing, he would say to her. And the little mermaid would look at him with eyes full of love, hiding the pain that pierced her feet like a sword whenever she took so much as a single step. Day after day, the prince kept the mermaid by his side. They walked together in the green forest or went riding amongst the hills. And never in all her life had the little mermaid known such happiness. But although the prince told her many times that he loved her as he loved his small sisters. Not for one moment did he think of her as a wife. One day, the prince told her that his counsellors were saying that soon he must think of choosing a wife. I have no wish to marry, he laughed. I have my dear orphan of the sea to keep me company and dance for me. Why should I marry? The little sea princess could only nod and smile, and she tried to keep smiling when the prince went on. It seems, he said, that the king of a neighbouring country has a very beautiful daughter who would make me a good wife. My prime minister says that it is my duty to visit this king and meet his daughter. When the great ship that was to carry the prince across the sea was fitted out, the prince sent for the little mermaid. I want you to come with me, he said. I shall just take one look at this princess and then return home. You will be my companion on the journey. The little mermaid found it strange and wonderful to be sailing in a big ship across the ocean. Once, as she stood alone on the deck, she saw her 5 sisters come swimming through the water towards her. They looked up at her sadly and held out their white arms to her, but the little mermaid could not greet them with words. She could only smile and wave. How anxiously she awaited the moment when the prince would meet the new princess face to face. Surely he would never be able to love her. Surely he would turn away and start making arrangements to return home. But alas, when the mermaid saw the king's daughter waiting on the quayside to welcome the young prince, she had to admit that the princess was indeed beautiful. She was lovelier than any of the other girls at the prince's court. By the end of the day, it was clear to everyone that the handsome young prince was enchanted by the princess. Not only was she very lovely, but also very kind and gracious, and she was especially kind to the little mermaid. After a few days, the prince said to the mermaid, "I can see that you're growing to love the princess. I know that already she loves you. When we marry, you shall live with us in the palace, and nothing will be changed." For answer, the mermaid kissed the prince's hand, hiding her eyes so that he could not see how her heart was breaking. She had failed to become his wife. The sea witch had said that if the prince married someone else, she would die. Soon she would be nothing more than white foam on the waves of the sea. In great splendour, the prince and the princess were married, and after the wedding, they went aboard the ship so that the prince could take his new wife home to his palace. The little mermaid went with them, hiding her sadness. That night, the mermaid did not sleep. So great was her sorrow, it seemed as if her heart were breaking, and she knew that with the first rays of the sun she would die. As she stood all alone on the deck of the great ship, she suddenly saw her sisters rise out of the sea. They were as pale as death, and their long, beautiful hair no longer streamed out behind them in the wind. "We have given our beautiful hair to the sea witch," the eldest called out above the noise of the wind, "so that we might bring you help. You need not die tonight after all. The witch has given us her silver knife, and you must thrust it into the prince's heart before the sun rises. The blood that falls on your feet will change them back once more into a fish tail. You will become a mermaid once again and will return to us." The silver knife fell at the mermaid's feet, and as she picked it up, her sisters dived under the waves. Like a shadow, the mermaid stole into the prince's cabin, where he slept with his lovely bride at his side. For a moment, the little mermaid stood there, holding the knife over his heart, and then she turned away and fled from the cabin. Far, far out to sea, she threw the witch's knife, and it sank beneath the waves. She dived from the side of the ship and followed it. But the grave little mermaid did not, after all, change to white foam on the waves. Her gentle heart had won for her a special place among the good spirits of the air. "Where am I going?" she asked, as she found herself floating gently upwards. And the spirits told her, "You are one of us now, because you loved and suffered so much." In the morning, the prince searched in vain for his dear little companion. "It is strange," he told his young wife. "Although she is nowhere to be found on the ship, I feel that she is still with me." I am," whispered the little mermaid as she tenderly brushed his brow. But only the wind and the sea knew that she had spoken. And that's the end of the tale of the Little Mermaid. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please let us know if there's any stories that you would like to hear in the shed, or any stories that you've written yourself. Just write to us, asking any questions or any suggestions to make the story shed better. But in the meantime, time even, take very good care and be well, and bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.